I'm more so competitive with myself. So I was constantly trying to improve my own times and just keep getting better.
Amelia Hartford is a name that has become synonymous with speed, innovation, and breaking barriers in the automotive world. Known for her record-setting builds, including the world's fastest C8 Corvette and a 2,000-horsepower Nissan Z, she has carved out a unique space as a builder, professional driver, creator, and actress. Yet, behind the viral videos, the high-octane builds, and the seemingly perfect career lies a far more complicated reality. Today, we delve into the dark side of Amelia Hartford's story, the side no one talks about, and explore why she is sometimes labeled the most hated car influencer. From tragedy to triumph, Amelia Hartford's life took a sharp turn at just 16. A father's death by self-ending created a kind of silence that words could not fill. A teenager faced with that kind of loss often searches for something steady, something that makes sense again. For Amelia Hartford, that something became cars. Strange choice at first glance, right? Loud engines, grease, long hours in a garage. But sometimes healing hides in unexpected places. Pain did not disappear, but a new focus began to grow. Moving to Indiana introduced a different environment, one filled with car enthusiasts, late-night builds, and shared passion. That space offered something important. Not perfect comfort, not instant healing, but a sense of belonging. And honestly, what matters more during moments like that than feeling understood, even without many words? Cars slowly became more than metal and wheels. Cars turned into routine. Cars turned into purpose. A broken engine needed fixing. A project needed finishing. Something always needed attention. That constant demand left less room for overwhelming thoughts. And maybe that was part of the appeal. When hands stay busy, does pain feel a little quieter? Time passed, and that passion did not stay hidden. Social media became a window into that world. Amelia Hartford started sharing moments online, not polished highlights, but real situations. A failed build here, a long night there, oil-stained hands, frustration, trial and error. Nothing filtered to look perfect, and that honesty stood out immediately. Many online creators choose to show only success. Perfect cars, clean garages, smooth results. Amelia Hartford chose a different route. Broken parts showed up on camera. Mistakes stayed visible. Setbacks became part of the content. That approach raised an interesting question. Why do people connect more with imperfection than perfection? Growth followed naturally. An audience started paying attention, not just to cars, but to authenticity. Viewers did not just see builds. Viewers saw effort. Viewers saw persistence. And most importantly, viewers saw someone refusing to give up. That kind of energy pulls people in. After all, who does not respect someone pushing through challenges in real time? But honesty comes with a hidden weight. Sharing everything sounds freeing at first. No secrets, no pretending. Yet constant openness can blur boundaries. Personal struggles stop being private moments. Personal struggles turn into public conversations. Every mistake becomes something strangers can comment on. Every difficult day becomes something others can analyze. That kind of exposure raises another question. Where does personal life end and public image begin? For someone building a brand around being real, that line becomes harder to see. Fans expect honesty. Followers expect updates. Silence can even feel like disappointment to an audience used to constant sharing. Pressure builds quietly in that space. A need to stay authentic while also protecting personal peace creates tension. Too much sharing invites judgment. Too little sharing risks losing connection. Finding balance becomes a challenge on its own. Despite that, Amelia Hartford continued forward. Cars remained central, not just as content, but as grounding force. A garage still offered focus. A build still required patience. A project still demanded attention. And maybe that consistency helped maintain stability when everything else felt unpredictable. Looking at that journey, one thing becomes clear. Passion sometimes grows from pain. Not in a neat or planned way, but in a way that gives direction when direction feels lost. Cars did not erase loss. Cars did not fix everything. But cars provided structure, community, and a sense of identity. And really, isn't that what most people search for after something life-changing? Something steady to hold on to, something that makes each day feel a little more manageable when everything else feels uncertain? But what happens when that search doesn't bring comfort, and instead, it slowly begins to build tension from within? That quiet weight starts to grow, unnoticed at first, until it becomes impossible to ignore. Stay right here, because what comes next reveals. The pressure cooker. Amelia's career sits inside a very intense system shaped by internet fame and constant content demands. Work does not end after building a fast car or finishing a project. Work continues with filming, editing, posting, replying to comments, tracking performance, and planning what comes next. Personal passion turns into a full business operation. Every move carries pressure to perform. Every decision must attract attention. Without attention, growth slows. Without growth, income drops. That kind of cycle never really relaxes. How does anyone keep up with that pace for long? Take a look at Amelia's Chevrolet Corvette C8 build. Early plans sounded simple. A clean, stock setup seemed enough at first. That idea did not last. The project kept growing. More power became necessary. Bigger goals replaced smaller ones. Soon, a twin-turbo setup entered the picture. Power jumped to around 1,200 horsepower. That level of performance does not come easy. Parts fail, engines blow, unexpected problems show up. Instead of hiding struggles, everything gets recorded and shared online. Each breakdown turns into a video. Each rebuild becomes another episode. Every setback becomes content. Isn't that a strange situation, where failure also becomes success in a different way? This pattern does not happen by accident. Internet platforms reward constant activity. Posting once in a while does not work anymore. Regular updates keep attention alive. More views bring more visibility. More visibility brings more pressure to go even bigger next time. That pressure pushes projects beyond original limits. A simple build rarely stays simple. Bigger turbos, higher horsepower, faster times. That becomes the expectation. Once an audience gets used to extreme results, anything less feels underwhelming. How does someone slow down in that environment without losing relevance? Consider another example with Amelia's Nissan Z project. Power levels crossed 2,000 horsepower. Quarter-mile time dropped to 7.75 seconds at 181 miles per hour. Numbers like that belong to serious racing machines. Achieving that level takes precision, risk, and constant testing. Every run carries potential danger. Every adjustment could lead to success or failure. Still, each moment also serves another purpose. Cameras capture everything. Viewers expect updates. Comments demand faster results. Pressure builds again. At that point, where does passion end and obligation begin? This kind of environment creates a non-stop loop. Build something fast. Share results. Gain attention. Feel pressure. Build something faster. Repeat. Over time, that loop tightens. Rest becomes rare. Mistakes become more costly. Small errors turn into public discussions. Private struggles become visible topics online. Criticism arrives quickly. Praise also arrives, but often depends on constant improvement. What happens when improvement slows down? What happens when energy drops? Human limits still exist, even inside a digital world that never sleeps. Fatigue builds quietly. Long hours, tight deadlines, and constant expectations wear down focus. When focus drops, mistakes happen. When mistakes happen publicly, reactions multiply. Online spaces can be supportive, but also harsh. One wrong move can trigger endless opinions. Every comment section becomes a place for judgment. Does any algorithm pause for mental health? Does any system reward slowing down? That algorithm keeps moving forward, always chasing engagement. More clicks, more views, more reactions. Personal feelings do not factor into that equation. Only performance matters. Only numbers count. That creates a tough reality. Success depends on staying visible. Staying visible requires constant output. Constant output demands energy that no one can produce forever without strain. Amelia's journey shows both excitement and pressure living side by side. Fast cars, record-breaking runs, and huge online growth bring opportunity. At the same time, non-stop demand creates weight. Balancing passion, business, and personal well-being starts to feel less like a dream and more like a constant race, especially as expectations keep climbing and every win only seems to demand an even bigger one next. What once felt exciting slowly turns into pressure that never really switches off. Somewhere in the middle of all that noise, a quiet question begins to linger in the background, impossible to ignore for long. How long can that pace truly continue before something has to give? And when it finally does, what gets affected first? Stay with this, because what comes next reveals the real cost behind the grind. The mental health toll. Mental health sits right at the center of Amelia's journey, and that truth has never been hidden. Open conversations about a father's tragic loss shaped much of that path, and cars became more than machines. Cars turned into a form of escape, a way to focus, a way to rebuild something steady when life felt anything but steady. Time in a garage, hands busy with parts and tools, offered a kind of quiet that words could not always provide. Isn't it interesting how something mechanical can bring emotional relief when nothing else seems to work? That openness did not stop at personal healing. Public platforms became a space for advocacy, with support for groups like the American Foundation for E-Prevention. Awareness campaigns, honest posts, and shared experiences helped start conversations that many people avoid. Speaking up about such heavy topics takes courage, especially in a space where everything gets judged. But does awareness always come with understanding, or does attention sometimes turn into something else entirely? Life online can be complicated. Support often shows up, but so does something more intrusive. Concern from followers can quickly cross into personal territory where curiosity becomes assumption. A simple break from posting, a quiet day, or a tired expression can suddenly become a topic for public debate. Speculation spreads fast, and comments begin to build narratives that may have no connection to reality. How does anyone stay grounded when every small change becomes a headline in someone else's mind? Fatigue, for example, is a normal part of life. Long hours, demanding work, and emotional strain can affect anyone. Yet, in Amelia's case, even a short pause can spark rumors about breakdowns or instability. Social media often reacts before understanding, turning moments of rest into imagined crises. That kind of attention can weigh heavily on mental health. Instead of space to recover, there comes pressure to explain, defend, or prove stability. Isn't rest supposed to be simple? Work in a male-dominated industry adds another layer to all of this. Expectations stretch far beyond skill. Amelia carries an unspoken role as proof that women belong in garages, on build teams, and in front of cameras. Strength becomes part of a public image, and that image rarely allows room for off days. Mistakes, fatigue, or emotional struggles risk being seen as weakness instead of normal human experience. How fair is that kind of pressure? Balancing authenticity with expectation can feel like walking a narrow path. On one side sits honesty, the same honesty that fuels mental health advocacy. On the other side sits a constant demand to appear strong, capable, and unshaken. Social media rewards consistency and energy, even when energy runs low. Content must keep coming, updates must stay frequent, and engagement must remain high. Where does personal well-being fit into that cycle? Advocacy in this environment becomes both powerful and exhausting. Speaking about mental health helps others feel less alone, yet public vulnerability can invite criticism or misunderstanding. Courage shows up in every honest post, every partnership, every effort to shift how people think about mental health awareness. Still, pressure does not disappear. Instead, pressure adapts, finding new ways to push boundaries. Amelia's journey begins to feel less like a story and more like a tightrope walk, where every step forward comes with a cost. Helping others brings meaning, but protecting personal peace never seems simple. Cars become a quiet escape. Advocacy becomes a calling. Yet the noise of public life refuses to fade, and that lingering question grows louder. How does anyone keep giving without losing themselves? Stay till the end, because what follows reveals the real price. Rumors, fallout, and the cost of internet drama. One of the longest-running conversations around Amelia Hartford centers on whispers about a supposed fallout with daily-driven exotics, and that conversation refuses to fade quietly. Back when both names showed up side by side in videos and collaborations, everything looked aligned, almost like a fixed partnership in the minds of viewers. Then content started to change. Appearances reduced, and focus shifted toward personal projects. What usually happens in any creative space when schedules no longer match and priorities evolve suddenly turned into something else online. A simple change became a mystery that needed solving. A gap formed, and the internet rushed to fill that gap. From a realistic angle, nothing unusual stood at the center of that shift. Collaborations come and go. Business directions change. Creative people move in new directions all the time, but silence tends to make people uncomfortable. Without clear updates or explanations, assumptions begin to grow. Questions start forming. Did something happen behind the scenes? Was there a disagreement? Did egos clash? None of these questions needed evidence to spread. Speculation often travels faster than facts, especially when curiosity meets a lack of information. That pattern says a lot about online culture. Drama attracts attention in a way that normal explanations never could. A calm business decision rarely becomes a trending topic, but a rumored fallout immediately grabs interest. Content creators and commentary channels understand this dynamic very well. Entire videos get built around dissecting relationships, reading into small details, and connecting dots that may not even exist. Each theory adds fuel to an already growing fire, and before long, a simple situation turns into a widely accepted narrative. This kind of scrutiny carries an extra layer in car culture, especially for a figure like Amelia. Conversations rarely stay focused only on work. Instead, discussions shift toward identity and credibility. Is a builder genuine or just playing a role? Is success earned or manufactured? Why does public perception feel so invested in labeling someone one way or another? That pressure creates an environment where every move gets analyzed, and every decision becomes part of a larger debate about authenticity. The audience often acts like a gatekeeper, shaping expectations around who gets accepted and how. A space that should celebrate creativity sometimes turns into a test that never ends. Instead of allowing growth or change, the narrative demands consistency with a version that already exists in people's minds. That kind of control can feel limiting. How does any creator evolve under constant judgment? How does personal identity stay intact when outside voices keep assigning roles? Even humor does not escape this cycle. A lighthearted joke about starting an OnlyFans account, clearly meant as playful banter, somehow transformed into a repeated talking point. That single moment kept resurfacing, used by critics as a way to question credibility and diminish real accomplishments. A joke stopped being a joke and became a label. That shift shows how quickly context can disappear once something enters the rumor cycle. At a broader level, this situation reflects how easily personal lives become content. Lines between entertainment and reality blur, and respect sometimes gets lost in the process. Speculation replaces understanding, and repetition gives rumors a sense of truth. What starts as curiosity often ends as a fixed narrative, regardless of accuracy. And once that narrative takes hold, reversing it becomes almost impossible. In the end, what remains is a reminder of how powerful online perception can be. A simple change in direction turns into a story filled with conflict. A joke turns into criticism. A person slowly stops being seen as just a person and starts becoming a character, shaped and reshaped by public opinion, whispers, and half-told stories. And somewhere in the background, a bigger question refuses to go away. How much of what people believe is actually real? And how much is built from silence and assumptions? Stay with this, because what comes next reveals a deeper truth. The price of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. Amelia Hartford's story cannot be separated from the broader context of women in automotive culture. She is often seen as a symbol, proof that women can build, race, and influence in a space traditionally dominated by men. While this representation can be empowering, it also comes with heavy burdens. Amelia is expected to be flawless, to never have a bad day or a failed project. Her successes are scrutinized for authenticity, and her failures are magnified as evidence against her legitimacy. This pressure is compounded by the internet's tendency to reduce complex individuals to caricatures. The demand to constantly prove herself leaves little room for personal growth or change. Friendships and collaborations are politicized, and any shift is interpreted as betrayal. For Amelia, the very thing that saved her, her passion for cars, can also consume her, as the internet turns her love into a production schedule and her life into content. The expectation to be a role model, an advocate, and a top-tier builder simultaneously is a heavy load. It means no room for mediocrity, no room for fatigue, and no room for mistakes. This relentless pressure is a dark side of her influence that few acknowledge. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.